God bless you guys. Thankful to be with the Wallace family. Why don't you introduce yourself to everyone?
My name is Jeff Wallace. Full name is Jeffrey Wallace, but Jeff is fine.
I'm Pat Wallace.
So thankful to be able to talk with this wonderful couple. And there's a lot that God has done through their family. And we want to kind of unpack that if you feel comfortable to, as much as you would like to.
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
First, I want to go ahead and talk about how both of you came into knowing the Lord and into church. What does that journey look like for each of you? Whoever wants to go first.
Go ahead, that's fine.
Me, mine first.
Yeah.
I was in nursing school. I was about 19 years old, and there were a group, about half a dozen of us girls that hung around together. And one of them lived not too far from church. And she said, let's just go over to our house this evening. So there were about 4 or 5, 6 of us that got together, and we went to her house. And lo and behold, he had been out in the garage with his brother. And that was my first introduction. He thought I looked like a big bird. And
She had a big yellow suit on. What are you going to say?
he had on this goofy baseball cap. And I thought he was hilarious. He just kept poking at his brother and making jabs at him. And I just thought he was one of the funniest persons I had ever met. And I think that's how it
That's how it started. Yeah,
That's
that's
how
what
it
I
started.
just got introduced to her then.
Yeah.
And then later on, the girls, when I first met her, she was engaged to somebody.
Okay,
I forgot
wow.
about that.
So I thought, well, you know what? That's okay. There's my sister brought a bunch of Mennonite girls with her to the house. So I thought, well, maybe I'll meet one of them or something. But that didn't happen. They were not interested. Anyway, but then later on, they all went camping together. And my dad took the trailer down for them to camp with. And I went down after work and rode my bicycle down there and went back in the campground and sat with her. And then she told my sister, why don't you have your brother call me sometime?
I did say that, didn't I?
Yes, you did. I'll have your brother call me sometime. So I did.
That's awesome.
And then we dated for a long time after that.
I had one of the other students ask me one day what it was like to date his brother. And I said, well, I'll date anybody once. And if I like him, I'll date him twice. And I actually ended up asking him to marry me on the second date.
Yeah, see, that's good.
Oh, wow.
Well, it was kind of funny that way. We were at a friend's house, and it was an interesting thing. Anyway, it was good.
Hey, it works.
Anyway, we have an interesting story about how we got engaged that people don't. We were
Tell
at
us
Christmas.
about
It was at Christmas time, and we had bought a ring together, but was making some payments on it, so it was still a jeweler. Well, of course, she, being a typical woman, wanted to show her friend her new ring, so they went down to look for it, and it wasn't there anymore. And so, because I had it already, but so she said, I guess I'm going to get it. And then so at Christmas time,
Know what I'm getting for Christmas?
yeah, I know I'm getting it for Christmas. And so at Christmas time, then I was having a terrible gallbladder attack. And that'll make you bend over. And once you find a place to stand or sit, that you sit there and you don't move. It's pretty traumatic.
Wow.
Anyway, so she come down the hall at my mom and dad's house there. And I said, here, I got this for you.
He was in the bathroom just finishing being sick.
And so here, I got this for you. And so I, gave her the ring. And I said, here you go. I'm going to bed. My brother Joel is going to take you home. Joel will take you home. So that's what we did. So isn't that exciting?
And I still haven't gotten a redo.
No. That's good. Maybe when we get your ring back from the jeweler, it's being repaired.
Maybe.
Yeah, it's getting repaired.
That.
It's getting repaired.
Awesome.
So,
Awesome. How did you guys get exposed to church?
well, I can tell
I
you
was
about mine.
finishing that story. Yeah. So I met this guy, and his family was so deeply rooted in church that I just normally started to go with him. They were having Sunday evening services at that time, and my dad always made it a point to make sure I was back in the door by 4 o'clock in the afternoon. So I had all of Sunday evening free to do whatever I wanted to do. And so I'd call him up, and he'd come to get me, and we'd go to church. And
Go to church.
that
It
was,
was-
my introduction.
And for her family was all Baptist. That's what they were raised.
Okay.
Her uncles were very staunch Baptist men, good guys, really good people. And but her dad he was upset with his brothers in his younger life because he is much younger, and so he didn't want too much to do with the church like the rest of them did. But but I had gone to church my whole life. Like I got the Holy Ghost when I was 9.
That's awesome.
Got baptized, and I got the Holy Ghost out of the church camp when I was a kid. And so I've been going down to the Fortville church camp for many, many
Yeah.
years. So back when they had water problems there. But like I said, that's how I started out. And we were just talking a little bit ago. I know that I think this little guy down here, I think would be like the 9th generation Pentecost.
Wow, that's incredible.
So, and that's not just from one side. That's from both sides. That's from my grandparents Wallace. My grandpa Wallace was an elder at the old Midway Tabernacle.
Which was Christ Temple.
No.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No. That was anyway. It's a different church nowadays, but he used to do all the baptizing at Christ Temple. I mean, at Midway Tabernacle. And so, it's in our life. And my great grandparents, they had started and worked with many different small churches and stuff. There's a church down on Mayflower Road today that my great grandparents helped work and started down there. So it's still going today down there. But like I said, it's kind of interesting how that comes around, doesn't it? That's my history.
Didn't you help build Brother Hayner's church too?
Well, that was back in. My dad was an electrician, and my older brother's an electrician, and I'm a sheet metal worker by trade.
I was about to say, you really took a turn there, yeah.
Well, I always give him a hard time to say I wanted to get a job where you had to know something, but so it's sheet metal. We took everything that we installed, we built ourselves. We didn't buy it from someplace. We made it and installed it. Okay, you're fine. Anyway, so
Come here.
there was a guy that was pastor of the church in Plymouth, the House of Prayer, and they were getting ready to build on the property they're where they're at now. And
Are you hungry?
and he came in 1980. He came to the house and was showing my dad the drawings. Wanted to know if my dad can help him wire that church. And we talked about it, made some arrangements. That was the day that the United States won hockey at the Olympics, Winter Olympics against the Russians.
Wow.
So we watched that, and then anyway, so that's when we first talked about doing it. We did the first phase of their church. We helped them there. We spent a lot of weekends there working, but that's just what we did to help and stuff.
Yeah.
But one thing I learned from my dad was there was things to do at church. We went and did it. Years ago, when I was a kid, we would go down to the House of Prayer when they were the little building downtown. Back when the what's his name? Who was the pastor down there that his son pastored in Alexandria?
In Alexandria?
Yeah, that's
Was it the Mangans?
Mangans. Yeah, when the
Mangans, yeah.
Mangans were pastoring. When the Mangans were Mangans, you could edit it. When the Mangans were pastoring,
Yeah.
I remember going down and meeting them, and we did some work when they were redoing some Sunday school classes in the basement. My dad went down there at night and did some electrical work to move some switches and stuff around for them. Because when they need something then, they always called my dad to come help them out with stuff down there.
Was that at the Plymouth church?
At the Plymouth church.
Yeah,
That
wow.
was the senior Mangans.
Yeah.
So, like I said, that was, so I've had an opportunity in my life to meet a lot of people.
Yeah.
A lot of people in Pentecost. That don't mean I like them some famous person, but I had an opportunity.
You're able to rub shoulders and be exposed to different people, and
So, but
Well,
that's just our family history. But like I said, I learned how to work at church, and you notice that my brother and my sister-in-law they come right out and start working at church and doing stuff, and our son goes to church in Elkhart, and he comes over and does a lot of stuff there. It does a lot of things. He's their maintenance man now. They needed some work done on the boiler. They needed some new valves and stuff in. Who did that?
Yeah, you did fittings. Yeah.
He did all that. My son did all that stuff.
That's awesome.
So, but that's how we, but I try to teach our kids that there was work to do at church. We went and did the stuff at church and helped out, and that's it. I'm sorry, I digress.
No, that's awesome. That is awesome. And I love what you said about, just letting that legacy, be passed down of, hey, whatever the house of God needs, whatever the man of God needs, we're going to go ahead and do it,
Yeah.
Nobody has to twist our arm about it. That's what we're about.
Yeah.
It's awesome. How did you come to church?
Through him. Through
him.
Jeff.
Yeah,
Yeah.
awesome.
His
Me and
sister.
him,
Right.
Yeah. They were so involved in church. You just fell right in and
Right.
fit right in.
Right. Actually, I was raised Presbyterian,
Yeah.
and my family never. I was kind of a church bus kid.
Okay.
My parents were older, and I've learned now. I kind of caught on. I think they just kind of liked having Sunday mornings alone, so they would put me on the church bus,
Yeah.
and I'd come home in the afternoon, and they always knew where I was and who I was with. But unless it was Easter or maybe Christmas, I was not really in church much ever.
Okay.
So it wasn't until after Jeff and I started dating that I really started to get seriously in church and got the Holy Ghost,
That's awesome.
got baptized.
That is awesome.
I was baptized as a Methodist, actually, and I got rebaptized. So
Wow. That's awesome. Incredible. Well, we've heard how you met each other and how you came to know the Lord and the generational legacy of being a part of the family of God and in the truth. If there is one thing that you would never forget, it always would be in your mind and on your heart throughout the years, and maybe even throughout your family, that God has done that you will always hold dear as a testimony, what would it be? What could you share?
Well, Patty and I, we talked about, you gave us some questions earlier. We talked about this and we had different opinions. And mine was not a great, it was a memory. But, dude, come on. Mine was not
It's all right.
mine was not a great memory of triumph. Of triumph. In some ways it was. Because when we first got married, of course, being newlyweds, we got she had was going to have a baby right away, and so
not that right away.
not that right. But anyway, so she, but then about 8 months along, she had a stillborn,
Mhm.
and that was pretty traumatic.
Yeah.
It was real traumatic for our lives, and but you know we got through it barely, and we got around it, and God kept us safe and kept us. And then a year later, we had twins.
Wow.
So it's something how God provides one way, then He provides another,
Yeah.
and it was exciting. And people say, "Well, how'd you do it?" I said, "Well, you don't know no different."
Right.
Well, because we had number 3 14 months later.
Well, then we had another 3 or 14 months later. But but we had the set of twins, and then, but it seems that God saw fit that when Christopher and Beth were 22 months old,
Mm-hmm.
God took him. And sometimes it's an awful thing. For us, it's two different experiences, being the mother and being the father. But I have found opportunities that experience has led me to be able to minister to somebody else or talk to somebody else about how I felt and how I did or whatever.
Yes.
And it may sound crazy as to be a blessing, but if there's ever a blessing to somebody else,
Yes.
it would have been the idea that I was able to talk to somebody else about that experience.
Yes. And this experience was other than the stillborn?
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
This was Christopher died when he was 22 months old.
All right.
So we had this progression of things that happened.
Yeah.
You know, you had the excitement, then you had the twins for 22 months, and that was an experience in itself. But
Yeah.
but then when they both got sick, and then he got sick, and then he had a type of spinal meningitis that now they have a cure for.
Yeah.
But back then they didn't.
Yeah.
Yeah. But that's my experience, and that's not her exciting time or her best time or blessing time, but I'll let her talk about her time.
I'm sitting right here looking at him.
Okay.
It's a recent blessing. It's not an old one. It's not generational.
Yeah.
But our friends started having grandchildren 20 years ago.
Yeah.
And we sat back while his siblings had 10 children between the 3 of them. And people said some things that were not real complimentary.
Not real kind.
Not always real kind. And I would come home in tears. We're just never going to have grandchildren. And God would say, maybe they're out there and you just haven't seen them. You haven't met them yet. And I thought, yeah, I know that. They could be out there somewhere. After all, the kids were in their late 30s. And by that age, you don't usually hook up with somebody who's not ever been married or not had children.
Yeah.
So that was a very real possibility. And I had figured out who that would be. Our older son had a friend since high school who had several children, and I just assumed that they would hook up, and that I already
Don't say
knew.
they'd hook up, say they would get together.
Whatever. So anyway, Andrew, the younger son, got married.
Yeah.
And we had this one. And Mark, the older son, got married, and he inherited 2 children that were
So the
16 and
weekend,
14 at the time.
17 and 14.
Wow.
At the week that he was born, we had 3 grandkids that week because that was the week that Mark got
He
engaged.
got engaged.
We got a 14-year-old and a 17-year-old.
And now we're going to have number 4 this summer.
Yeah, we have a player to be named later.
Come on.
Coming in July.
So in
Right.
18 months, we have gone from no grandchildren to 4. And God said, I have my plan. I
Yeah.
work my plan.
So
Yeah.
And so,
Even what you talked about the thought that, hey, maybe they're out there.
maybe they're out there. Yeah. And like I said, I thought I knew who they were.
Yeah.
And God came back and said, gotcha, you didn't know who they
You
were,
didn't know
were they?
anything,
yeah.
And yet I had it all in line. I had it
Yeah.
all in place.
Yeah, 2 out there and 2 to give
Two-
you later
two on the way,
Flesh and
yeah.
blood.
yeah.
Wow, that's so awesome.
And we just found out about the player to be named in July. So
Yeah,
it
that's
was-
incredible. What an awesome. Congratulations.
Yeah.
On
Thank
that.
you.
And even with your testimony, I know of several friends and some family that what you said will be a blessing. Your experience will be a blessing to them. I have a friend that experienced something very similar.
Yeah.
And God blessed them in the same way after that loss.
Years.
They
Well,
had two.
did they really?
Yeah.
yeah.
Not at the same time.
Oh,
but
no, they had 2 more.
they
Yeah.
had 2 more.
Well,
Yeah.
like I said, it's just you don't know. You don't always know what's coming at you.
Yeah.
You just don't know.
Yeah.
And sometimes you just got to believe God's got it in control, and you're just gonna let Him do it. And you can't control anything.
Yeah.
And I've learned that a long time ago. It's going to be what God's will and what God needs us to do. Who knows?
And it's hard to see the blessing at the time.
Mhm.
But as you look back, and I understand now when I was, in my late teens, early 20s, and people would say, I can look back over the years. Well, 21, 22, I didn't have that many years. But now in my mid 60s, I look back and I too can say, God was always there.
Yeah.
Things always played out, and they were always in our favor and for our best. Not definitely in the way that I or we thought they would work out, but nonetheless, and a lot of times even better
Yeah.
than what we had anticipated or hoped or thought would happen.
We've had times in our life
Awful
that
squirmy.
we have a daughter that I don't believe you've ever met,
Okay.
a son-in-law, and she, one of those people that would have made the greatest mom you've ever seen. She's just a wonderful girl, and
At least we think so.
we think so. She's my favorite daughter, I tell her. But many times, we found out that she had a miscarriage,
Yeah.
but she was told she'd never get pregnant. But then she had a miscarriage. I said, "See, you don't know."
Mhm.
Now they've chose to go ahead and keep it that way and not to have children because, like, she's 42 and he's 43 or 44, so
Yeah.
they're a little bit on
Yeah.
the older side. But Marcus is going to be 42 and he's a grandpa and he's a daddy.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Oh,
Let's
yeah.
not push it.
Well, Elijah.
We got that 18-year-old out there. I know.
Elijah is a good boy. So but proud of those kids. Elijah goes to IBC, and so that's pretty cool.
Awesome.
Made the president's list.
Made the
Even.
president's list at
That is
IBC.
awesome.
Yeah.
Pretty
That's
excited to hear that. That was pretty neat.
awesome. Yeah.
But like I
That's
said, we've been blessed with good daughter-in-laws and a good son-in-law. God's
And
been blessed.
you know what? You talk about little blessings. Our daughter's twin brother was named Christopher, and the name of the man she married is Christopher.
Wow.
So it's really nice to use both names in the same sentence again.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah, that's the blessing.
It's just different. Like I said, we have a weird story. Nothing
I
ever
think we
happens
do.
really easy to us. I mean, it always goes things crazy things happen.
Well, that builds the strongest of us, doesn't it?
Well, that is true.
Yeah.
You don't know what you have until you go through the hard parts.
Yeah. I mean, you said a lot that I think would be very beneficial to young families, young couples. But if there was one thing that you could think of that you would directly say, like specifically say to a young family or a young couple just starting out, what would you advise them, or what is one gold nugget you can give them that will be a blessing?
We went into our marriage with the understanding that divorce would never be a word that would come up. Divorce was just not ever going to be an option. Now, I also believe that neither of us have ever given opportunity or chance to make that an option. But that was one thing. The other was that you communicate. But when you communicate, you need to tell somebody why you're feeling what you're feeling, or why you're thinking what you're thinking, not just saying, well, I think this is what we should do, but to follow through with that and say, this is why I think we should do this, or this is how I think we should do it. How do you think we should do it? And communicate.
Yeah, partnership.
And
Yeah.
some things that like we talked about when we were younger married, and my wife informed me that when we sat down to eat, the TV was never going to be on when we ate a meal, even for us. We didn't sit and watch TV while we ate a meal. And something I've tried to instill in some other families at our church, even that our son Marcus had dated a young lady, a wonderful young lady, and she came for dinner one night. And while we were sitting there, and it was not uncommon for us to take 15, 20 minutes to eat a meal.
Yeah.
But then we'd sit and talk for an hour and a half afterwards. And if you want to find out about your children, what's going on in their lives, sit down and eat
What's
with them every
happening at
night.
school?
Mhm.
What's going on at school, who they're talking to, what's going on, who at school's acting up. You find out all kinds of things.
Yeah.
But the best thing you can do is sit down with the children. Well, when Marcus took her home, she was a mess. She said, you guys eat that, do that every night? He goes, what? He was like, I don't know what you're talking about.
She was just sobbing. Yeah, she was just sobbing.
And her family had taken and they sat on TV trays in the family room, watched TV while they ate. They didn't talk. So if you want to find out about your kid's life, start when they're younger. Now, is it easy? Oh, there was times when, especially after we lost Christopher and stuff, that we were, it was tough times. We had a newborn, and we had the baby, Chris and Beth, and then we lost Chris, and so things were like chaotic at like dinner time. We'd sit down to eat, and we couldn't eat because everybody was all a mess.
And even when they get into their early teens and their teens and they're playing sports and, they've got all these different activities, and it gets difficult. But try to make it a priority to at least a couple times a week to try to sit down and
sit down and get together. Because it's important.
Yeah.
Like
If
I
not
said,
dinner, maybe a board game or something, but just spend some time.
but that's like I said before. If you want to find out about your children's lives, you don't have to ask and pry.
Yeah.
Just sit down and eat with them. You'll be surprised what you find out.
Once their yappers get chewing, get used to it.
Yeah.
You don't mean it as a trick, but it's the truth, though, without trying to be.
Right.
You shouldn't have to pry into your children's life.
Yeah.
And when they come in and tell you what's going on, that's the best part.
Yes. They feel comfortable.
They feel
sharing.
And I'm going to believe that if they've grown up that way, they've done it all their lives, they're going to come back later when there really is an issue
Yes.
and say, hey, this is going on.
Yeah. It'll be natural to
How
them.
do I handle this?
Yeah. So like I said, it's just part of our lives. That's the thing I always wanted to pass. And I passed it on to even a couple families at our church. I
Yeah.
asked them one time, they said, well, we watch a movie night. And I said, nah, eat first, then have the movie.
Yeah.
And sit at the table together and eat.
Yeah.
And I think, and according to this person, they have started doing that more. And I thought that's pretty cool.
That's awesome.
So I don't know if you guys do it that way, but
Yes, and if we don't get to eat dinner all the time, we're at least eating some type of a meal together daily, and it's a blessing.
It is.
It's
It
a
really
blessing.
is. But like I said, it just, especially when the kids get older and get involved and go different directions, it's always nice. And to make sure you have a place to sit down and eat.
Yes.
All it
Yeah.
takes is some chairs and a card table if you have to.
Yeah, there's something powerful about that table to gather around.
Well, you know, look what we do with small groups. We get together and eat and sit down together.
Yeah,
And then I think just getting together and talking, it's the same thing. We sit and talk about all kinds of stuff at the table.
yes,
And we have a very broad range of people that come to our small group. We're very blessed by that. And we have someone with younger children, and we have people that are our age. And matter of fact, two of the couples I went to high school with, the guys, the people in there. And plus, I like Brother Phil and Sister Annette. I've known Brother Phil all my life. And Annette was a little bit younger than us, but Phil graduated with my sister.
Yeah.
And so we know them for a long time. And then I graduated. Well, if Brother Jim would have graduated, we went together at LaSalle together, him and his twin brother.
Okay.
So
Wow. Well, that's awesome.
you're
Well,
a
thank
mess.
you so much for allowing.
I hope we gave you enough stuff.
Oh, I mean, this is for all those that'll watch, and I think a lot has been said here today. It's going to be very helpful.
I hope so.
I hope so.
I believe
so.
it will.
I had
I'm
done
sure it will.
I had done a thing on the one young man Jim used to have come and do some videos and stuff, and we were at the Elwood campus, and he was asking me some questions, and I started talking to him about a couple things, and I made a mention of something my brother Joel's always talked about, and later on he showed my clip of the video. I said, "Hey, whatever happened with that little information I gave you?" He goes, "Oh, that was for me." And we always talk about our small group. Sometimes you don't know what you're saying or what you're
Yeah.
going to say to somebody does not necessarily mean to go to anybody else, but it was just something they needed to hear that you had no idea you were going to say it.
Yeah.
You know, you can think, well, what am I going to say? What am I going to say? Sometimes just start talking to people and God will put the words without you even knowing it.
Yeah. So
And I've
helpful.
seen that. How many times have you seen that in your life?
I've seen it quite a bit, and this happened to me
Yeah.
quite a bit. Where
Yeah.
some people have been just talking, and something they said just really struck a chord.
Or it was the exact same thing you've been praying about.
Yeah, yeah. And God used that voice to confirm it. And
And I worked in Indianapolis quite a bit, and I would go to Calvary on the church night for the midweek service because I was there and I wanted to go to church. And on Thursday night they would have the IBC accent.
yeah,
And you know how many nights the student would speak and Brother Mooney would come out, and in that 7 minutes that they spoke, he had to come out and lay his Bible down on his chair and go over and talk to him
yeah,
because what they spoke was either the beginning, the middle, or the end of his message that he
Yeah.
had for that night. And they never talk. They didn't talk.
yeah. No, they don't do that. Yeah,
And so, like I said, it's just one of those things that was like, that's pretty exciting to see
Yeah.
that.
it aligns.
It not aligns, but it excites you about what God can do, the power of God,
Yes.
how He directs and moves things.
Land on your
Look
head.
how Brother Jim gets ideas, and other people confirm those ideas to him on what to do and how that works. And that's how it should be.
Get it?
Yes. Yes.
That's how it should be.
We're all connected to the mind of God. Well, thank you again, and we
You're welcome.
appreciate you spending the time to share and pour out those years of experiences on this video
I hope so.
format.
That was enjoyable.
That was
Right.
enjoyable. Like I said, just I hope we have something that you can use.
Yes.